Howdy everyone, it's the BlackShadow here, hope you're keeping well. I've just one question for you. What would you have done? So, this is not a normal review, as you can tell from the length of this video. Rather, this is a bit of a case study of a bizarre spot I ended myself in during the wildcard stages of the Golden Path Internationals tournament. I kind of got forced into here after a bit of a crazy end to the groups, which was what it was. And as such, a couple of days ago, I played my wildcard game against Sword Cancel and OrangeTurnsBack. Now, the reason I'm bringing this to you is that I ended up in a completely bizarre situation at the end of this game. I'm not going to show you all of it because it's not really relevant for the purposes of the video. I just want to show you the last round of this game. This was like round 8, for example. Me here with the Beast in the top right, Sword Cancel the Baron at the top left, and we've got OrangeTurnsBack with Vernius down the bottom left here. Now, the point of this video is that I want to know what you guys would have done in the situation I found myself in. So I'm going to quickly just run through the final round of the game. The rest of it doesn't really matter, except it was very bitter fighting, real gritty stuff. I had worked my way to get into position here, including this crazy Fremen steal here in the bottom left, which had to be worked from the previous round and come out of nowhere. Having won the previous combat, but managing to keep a healthy garrison, we elect to go in heavy in this combat. We've got to, it's the tier 3s, it's time, with Beast, we've got the firepower, we've got the techs available to really, really try and put the clamp down here. At 8 points with the Fremen steal, if we can score 2, the game is over and we don't have to worry about it anymore. And obviously being in first position is a great opportunity to do that. First to hit your Fremen, first to hit your hardy warriors, your highlanders, all that lovely good stuff. Get those troops in and rock and roll. But obviously, coming into this, I was pretty concerned about Vernius, who obviously had 6 spies and could have gone Highlanders. Diplomacy is out. Now, Rombo had found himself in a kind of a weird spot as well this game, in that he had found himself both Liet Kai's and Gil Bankers. So he was trying to win combat, do alliance stuff, and get Spice of Slow at the same time, so why he got Holtzman Engine, which he accepted at the end was probably just too many things. He even got Detonation Device as well, so just went for absolutely everything. Probably spread himself too thin, and that was a shame. But the main point of this video, realistically, is between me and the Baron. So here's how the turns go. We use treachery at Fremen to steal the Fremen Alliance, get troops in. Makes perfect sense. Rombo uses shifting legions to take negotiations. We can start shifting away from the Fremen, so we can put his influence elsewhere, in this case the Emperor, to try and recover some points. Makes perfect sense. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So, Baron uses his signet ring to go to interstellar shipping, which he had a lot ages ago, and he goes up and down the tracks, and he pulls Sonic Snoopers with the signet ring, looking to obviously get hold of a load of intrigues. Funny enough, we saw something exactly like this in my group game, which I uploaded onto the channel, where the Baron went and did something pretty similar and just trashed all of his cards because they were all rubbish. However, this time you'll notice that the Baron goes ahead, gets the intrigue from Snoopers, and also gets the intrigue from the tech. And when he does, you'll notice that of the intrigues he's got, he uses Poison Snooper, which was one of the cards that he just pulled, and then he goes to trush the Sonic Snoopers, which he had just bought, and he only changes out one of his intrigues, particularly one of the ones that he'd held off for a little while, getting rid of Strategic Push, which he accidentally showed, and getting rid of that to find another one. So keeping hold of 3 of the 5 intrigues that he had, so clearly like what he found. He then plays the intrigue he just draws bypass just to clear stuff out of his hand, so there's no chance of any secret stealing. You can probably start to see where this might be going. So speeding along the rest of the round, the problem is for us is that it is economic supremacy. So the only way for us to get hold of 2 points from the combat is we need either a load of spice or we need a load of cash, and we start off with neither. Also extra annoying is the fact that we have Super Must Awaken in our hand, which basically is one part of the battle winning conditions in our hand anyways, and we're never going to get hold of 8 spice, we have no water, so I just go Imperial Basin to get some more troops in, kind of reinforce the win, and get the spice necessary for either Super Must Awaken or the endpoint victory. Rombo just goes to research station. At this point, his game is probably largely over, so he's just trying to find as many cards as he can in order to get as many spice as he can, but it's going to be pretty hard for Rombo to make up for this. So Baron goes with his Dispatcher Envoy card, which is one of the intrigues that he's found, which lets him send any one of his cards to any one of the factions based on the board. And he uses one of his Spice Must Flows in order to go to Selective Breeding, to obviously try and find more spice, and also to reshuffle his cards. It's worth noting that it was the middle intrigue, so it was one of the ones that he had kept hold of for a little while, which means the 2 intrigues he's got is one that he had from a previous round, and one that he'd found this round. And then this obviously gets added with a third intrigue that he gets for the Bene Gesserit alliance, so back up to 3, obviously keeping everyone guessing. Now, going back to me, I'm already in kind of a bit of a weird spot in this one, in that I'm kind of looking at my hand, and I'm kind of looking at what I can do. I've got Appropriate, which is great, and it's got me a lot of text in this game, but the problem is, it's like, well, what can I really find here? What can I do now to advance position? I'm going to win the combat, almost certainly, and I'm pretty likely to get, the 2 points. I'm going to get them regardless whether I come for a second. I'm getting the 2 points. This is going to be the final round of the game, like, for sure. So I'm like, well, what can I really do here to kind of, like, help myself? And I'm like, well, intrigues can be fun. There's some intrigues that I could find. Maybe I could make useful. Machine culture, for example, I can reveal was just a point. It's possible that Hundro has it. He'd been kind of keeping some of his intrigues on his hands, but obviously you don't know this, and there was a big intrigue deck in the game, so, could find loads of stuff. So we do make our way to Carthag, and we find Charisma, which, frankly, is doing absolutely nothing for us. Oh, well, it was a pun. Now, to iron out the rest of the round, Romba ends up just going Wealth, just to get hold of the Emperor point and get the Alliance in case the game goes on around. He's got more garrison troops. He's still got the 6 spice. We can fire Highliner. He could have fired Highliner now, but it didn't really do anything for him in the long run. Although, quite noticeably, him doing that didn't put any troops into the common, which means that Baron can now go mining at Hager Basin here and actually to get hold of more spice and put some troops in. Or he can go to a city, or he can do whatever. This obviously is bad for me, because if Baron gets hold of the 2nd point for the 2nd place, that's really bad for me. He gets closer. I need Romba to win this. It does my game a lot better in the long run. So at this point, I already am kind of in a little bit of a weird spot here. I end up using Simpson Awakened now, just in case something crazy happens. I don't really know what could have happened, but, like, the Baron does have, like, Sardaukar Legion, which can be a problem for me, throwing troops in. Maybe he's got a ton of battle cards, I basically said, look, this is going to be the last turn of the game. I'm going to take my 2 points, and the Baron's just got a ton of catching up to do. And as such, I've got to hope, really, that Romba does hold on to 2nd place. If Baron gets the battle point plus a Spice Must Flow, that could be really, really bad news for me. Romba does reveal for the point with no extra swords, which is not great for me at all. And then Baron does have enough of the Spice Must Flow, so he gets himself up to 8. He gets an extra intrigue with Gurney Halleck, which fortunately for us does absolutely nothing. Just a straight bump with the Bene Gesserit, which doesn't do anything for us at all. No extra points there. So the Baron comes in with 8 points, us on 9, and Romba on 6. Now this is where the fun starts. If you think back to when the Baron cycled through only some of his cards, I actually went and openly said, kind of bantery like, I said, okay, so you're keeping hold of Call the Market, Plans Within Plans, and Grand Conspiracy. Now, of course, banter aside, this was actually pretty relevant because, of course, the Baron scores endgame points on all 3 of these cards. Specifically, if you have a look at this shot here from the back end of the game, if we look at the 3 intrigues as we go. So Plans Within Plans, the Baron definitely does have 3 persuasion with 3 separate factions, so that's a point. We look at Grand Conspiracy. Well, the Baron does have a Spice Must Flow, he does have a High Council seat, and he does have 4 influence with 2 separate factions. So that's a point, although he never went and got hold of 2 Dreadnoughts, so just the 1 still. And if we go to Call the Market, the Baron also has a point from that, courtesy of having 2 Spice Must Flows. He doesn't get the bonus for having the most Spice Must Flows because of Romba's crazy deck, but that's still 3 cards that have a point each. So returning to the conflict for just a moment here, once we get underway, I say I've got nothing, because I don't. Romba uses advanced weaponry for 4 swords, which is huge because it turns out that one of the Baron's 3 intrigues was Private Army, with all that spice he'd been collecting, and those 5 swords just short, so the Baron can't get the battle point, and he's stuck at 8. But this is where this really, really bizarre situation comes up for us. Now, we do need to walk this back a touch, because at this point, I'd committed myself and said, I'm just going to make this the last turn. But let's take this back slightly. Let's say I'd not used Sleep Must Awaken, I'd have kept hold of my 4 spice. So I meant I only had 8 points instead of 9. Now, Economic Supremacy is a very unique battle card in that it's the only card in the game where if you win it, you're not actually obliged to take all 3 victory points. And the reason for that is because of these arrows here. Much like in the general game, like with any agent abilities or reveal abilities, or even on the board here, if it's an arrow, it's optional. And the reason it's optional is because, of course, you might not be able to fulfill those conditions. You know, for example, I don't have 6 Solari, so I can't get on that victory point. But this is what I want to ask you guys about. Going by economic supremacy, I have to take the big point for winning. That's forced. But the question is, do you actually take the point for the spice? Do you spend the 4 spice to take the point and get yourself to 10 and bring it to endgames? Or are you really worried about the Baron? Because as I've said, there's 3 endgame cards in the deck. And if he's got 2 of them, he's going to beat me in endgames. It's a really fascinating situation, this, in that there's only 3 cards in the entire deck. And the Baron has to have 2 of the 3 in order to beat me. If he's got 1, doesn't matter. He's got to have specifically 2 of the 3 mentioned. But of course, if he does have it, he wins the game. And there is still a chance for us to decide to back out, not take the extra point, being terrified of the Baron's endgames, and then deciding to carry the game on, looking to, say, win the next game's combat, secure 2 points, hoping it's 2 points. We also have to consider what on earth is going to happen in the next round if I do decide to keep this going on. So there's 3 more tier 3s, for example, that could come up. We've got Carfag, good, 2 points. We've got Arakeen, good, 2 points. But then we've also got Grand Vision. If you have a look at the state of the intrigue tracks, it's going to be really difficult to get anything from that. It's not looking good at all. We also have another issue here in that how do I even approach the next turn's combat? As you see here, I kind of obviously went really hard here, for example. And, you know, if I could have decided maybe, like, say, before going to Carfan to keep some of those troops back, but Romba's sitting there with Dreadnoughts, he's sitting there with Intrigues, and he's sitting there with enough spice to hit Highliner, and he's got Diplomacy coming up in his deck, almost certainly in the next one, and he's gonna barrel in, and I've got no firepower remaining. And it's just, how on earth am I going to win this combat? And of course, if I don't win this combat, then what was the point of me delaying the game? Because the Baron's just going to make even more ground on me, and then he doesn't even need both endgame intrigues if he's got them. He just needs 1, and I'm kind of screwed. Another issue to consider is that, in theory, yes, we could win the combat, and we could still cash in the 4 spice and get up to 12 points. That's like the absolute dream scenario. But how am I going to be able to do that? All my battle cards are gone. I'm on a fresh draw. I can help with anything here. I might get my Signet Ring. I might get my Dune Desert Plans. All my big cards, Power Plays, my Treacheries, have all been used here. And I've got no resources really to run with anything else. I can't go to Research Station in order to find Spicemas Flows on top. I'm at the complete whims of the deck and whatever I happen to find. And, like, I'm so heavily committed to resources at this point. It's really hard to kind of find a way to win 3 tier 3 conflicts in a row. That is really, really hard to do. So that is the question that I ask you, and I'd love to know what you think. Would you, in this situation, found yourself able, scared of the Baron because of his intrigues and the fact that he might have 2 endgames to beat you out of only 3 cards in the entire deck? If he's got 2 of them, his game's over. Do you decide not to spend the spice and keep the game going another round? Now, before really getting into like all this board game stuff, I did spend a good couple of years playing poker. Not like heavily competitively professionally, but for a good 2 or 3 years, like I was going, you know, more often than not, and I was enjoying myself. I made some money out of it. I met some good people. It was lovely times. And it really compares the situation to, like, making this crazy hero fold where, like, it seems like you're scared of almost, like, your own imagination of the Baron just turning up and saying, yeah, here's 2 blue cards, I win the game, you know? Of, like, having, like, it's so hard for the Baron to have you beat here, but that tiny little bit of you that's concerned that he is beat is a problem. And, of course, if he's got you beat, you're out of the tournament. That's the thing. This isn't just some casual game you're playing with your friends. You know, like, oh, you had that. Oh, that sucks. This is a tournament, you know, and there's money on the line. You know, we're fighting tooth and nail. This is just a straight winner takes all, real cutthroat sort of format that we've got here for the wildcards. And if you're wrong, you're out. And of course, the problem is that if you decide to make the game go on, and you're wrong that the Baron has 2 endgame intrigues, it's really hard for you to win the next combat, and then he probably beats you anyways. So please let me know what you think about the situation. Would you have found the hero fold, or do you just say to the Baron, if you've got me beat, you've got me beat, this is the last round, and we rock and roll? There is an argument, and you could definitely say maybe at the very start of the turn saying, well, it's not an ideal conflict for me, maybe just try and get hold of the 1 point, and maybe look to keep hold of the spice for the next round. But having already spent a ton of resources on the first tier 3, and then this one, and then a third in a free-player game, even for a beast who's got his signet ring up and running, it's just such a tough ask to try and find all of that firepower against 2 players that continuously. And if you are curious about what the Baron had, I mean, what do you think? It's the Baron. Of course he had it. What a savage way to go out of a tournament. I don't just make this topic because it was me in this situation. Like, even if I had been calling it, I would have made a video about it because I think it is really mortally fascinating. But for the Baron to have 2 of the 3 cards, you know, to end my game and end my tournament, what do you do? What do you do? Thanks for watching, everyone. We will get more content for the tournament as we go. We're just going to start uploading with the wildcards, and we're making our way to the round of 14 knockouts, which I'll be calling as much as I physically can. Although, it's hard not to be just a little bit sick at how this played out. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Fascinating to know what you made of this.